Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight's story is The Banquet. When one works with his hands, he grows to resent those who don't, particularly those he works for. If I affirm anything, it is this. My father worked the fields. My mother married my father, so naturally I would work the fields. He was my teacher. By the time I had a mustache, I could pick crops and place them in barrels. By the time I had a beard, I did so for a living. Like him, I worked for someone else. I'd no claim to my own labor, only the pittance I earned. The other determined this, based on the least cost, and like my father, I did not contest my wages. My second employer was of common birth, but that stopped him not. He was petit bourgeois, selling discount items at his shop. Through wise investment, he was able to buy a farm and its workers, in other words, my co-workers and I had admired his predecessor, though grudgingly. Of noble birth, he lived according to his title, graceful, cultivated. While I resented our relationship, I did not resent him. His successor had no such virtues. In fact, he lacked them entirely. A self-made man, he'd lusted for status for years. Once obtained, he dispensed entirely with taste. From his sprawling estate to his lavish parties, his hubris engulfed the countryside. Still, my days did not change. His ambition exceeded his ability. He knew nothing of farming, as was readily apparent. He made us plant more than was needed, grow more than was needed, more than could be carried, more than could be sold, more than the soil could accommodate. Much of it was wasted. I simply waited for him to fail, at which point the farm would be sold. Really, he was no bother, until he sent me a letter. I awoke one morning to find the yellow slip attached to my front door. At first I was surprised. Why there and not in my mailbox? And why was his name on it while mine was not? I thought, stroking my chin as I carried it inside. I opened it to find an assistant's handwriting, and read it only for amusement. Greetings. To commemorate my entry into the world of agriculture, I am hosting a banquet. It is this Friday evening, beginning at 6 p.m. and ending whenever it ends. Attendance is free, and everything will be provided by yours truly. This includes a feast and a live ensemble. I look forward to seeing all of Bruegel in attendance, nay, all of Saladon Valley. Regards, Lord Richard Vallis. A banquet open to the public to celebrate his purchase. This was relevant for one fact: workers were invited. Translation: attendance was required, so he could feign noblesse oblige and bolster his repute. I had always worked for others, but for the first time I felt truly exploited. I brought the letter to my father, whose habit it was to ignore the news. "The bastard!" he chortled. "I know, it's terrible. I assume you're going?" "I assume so, yes." I could not risk firing. At home I prepared. My one task was finding decent clothes, something I never needed, much less could afford. Luckily, an old suit hung in my closet, one bought second-hand for a funeral years before. If he took issue, he'd best keep it to himself, or raise my wages. I would not dress until I left, and had nothing to do until then. I slouched on my couch, resting my body while flexing my mind. There I imagined the evening, what it would look like, be like, and above all, how long I needed to stay. Then I stood and donned my suit for the second time to date. I set forth, waving to a man with a covered wagon. After a day's work, I would not walk the distance. He let me board, and we exchanged the usual pleasantries. The village faded in the background. A goat slept beside me in the back. Its odor notwithstanding, it would be the night's best company. "You're going?" he asked. "I am," I feigned enthusiasm. "Why, aren't you?" He said in his letter he was looking forward to seeing all of us, yes. "Ah, so you got it as well?" "Everyone did." Thus ended the conversation. The mansion's shadow covered the valley, looming like an omen of something foul. In time, its source appeared ahead, tall and wide, with a brick foundation, wooden walls and roof, stained glass windows, and an immense front door with a brass knocker. It stood on a high hill in tribute to his arrogance. The wagon rode with ease. I patted the goat's head, thanked my benefactor, and stepped out into the ground. There I stared at my destination, then turned and saw him off, wishing I was in tow. The guests sounded from inside. I inhaled deeply and knocked. Footsteps sounded and the door opened, revealing a butler with sagging eyes. A kindred spirit, I felt at ease, waxing pithy. He did the same. He closed the door behind me and led me to the hall, where he abruptly turned and trudged off. I stood in the doorway and studied the room. It was spacious as expected and tastelessly ornate. This was no problem for the guests, who had gathered in abundance. To the side stood a table, cheaper than the others. Around it slumped my peers, dressed like me in cheap apparel. "Good evening," they called and waved me over. "Gentlemen," I affirmed. I obliged. After all, I was welcome nowhere else. Our discussion was shallow. We wondered of our betters, their names, from whence they came, the distance they had traveled. We wondered of our host and the pronouncements he would surely make. This quickly grew old, and we waited quietly. The butler returned, his back stooped, grimacing. He stood in the center of the room, feigning enthusiasm. He clapped his hands, and the attendees sat, staring quizzically. Who was this commoner, and why should they listen? "I present to you Lord Vallis," he sighed. He slinked off, and the room burst in applause. It was short-lived. Vallis strode forth in all his glory. His outfit was so bright, so garish and ornate, it blinded. Everyone bit their tongue and swallowed nothing, while he scanned in approval. His self-satisfaction could be felt throughout. "And a special thank you to my hard-working men," he declared, beckoning to us. The rich nodded in surprise. "So that's what they're doing here." We nodded, feigning appreciation. "If I understand my staff correctly," he began, "the meal is but minutes away. For us, it was likely hours, or not." The side door opened, and the staff emerged, carrying plates and settings, glasses and silverware tucked in red napkins. They made their rounds. Vallis returned to the center, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. What, we wondered, had occurred? Why this rare shift in demeanor? "My friends," he lamented, "I'm afraid the kitchen has exhausted its supply. Conveniently, we were not yet served." Vallis continued, and we listened, entirely unsurprised. "It has come to my attention that we've a reserve supply of beet stew, one that shall be served with haste," he declared. The staff returned, their faces similarly but sincerely red. They trudged to us with a large tank of soup, a stack of bowls, and wooden spoons. Eyed us tiredly and vanished back into the kitchen. We eyed each other, amused and strained to eat. Nothing less than Vallis's legacy was on the line. The taste was tolerable, if nothing else. My face tightened, yes, but not so badly it couldn't be concealed. As an actor, I was Vallis's equal, in case he was watching. "I assume everyone is enjoying themselves?" he asked. The rich raised their glasses. We raised ours. The butler returned, holding an item covered by red fabric, and stood beside him. What could this be? "I know you're all wondering," he said, as if to entice us. "Far be it from me to keep you in suspense. I have begun a collection of rare and valuable items from all corners of this earth. This, you see, is the first, but rest assured it will not be the last." "Edson," he said, calling the butler. He held the item to his side, his palm lying flat beneath. The butler pinched the cloth, lifting it in the air. A second employee appeared beside him, turning and taking the cloth. "So it doesn't touch the floor," he explained. We gathered. "Edwin, show our audience our acquisition." Immediately, we thought the cloth was best returned. It was a silver bust of a man's head, its features hideous and malformed. It was bald, its brow was sloped, its eyes were bulged with thick brows, its lips were swollen and distended, its ears were comically oversized and asymmetrical. I hoped it did not represent a real person for the model's welfare. I gazed around and saw the entire room agreed. Vallis seemed oblivious. Indeed, he showed it proudly, expecting us to double over, amazed. Tongues were tied and lips sealed, holding a deluge of derision. Would the dam break? Personally, I was fascinated. It was both ugly and ambiguous. What did it portray? A ghoul or a man who resembled one? Did the artist so intend, or was he simply inept? Was it his greatest triumph or his greatest embarrassment? The night had grown interesting. The others feigned applause and tried to salvage their appetites, tried to cast it from their minds. I did not. I did not notice at first, but the face seemed to show emotion. "All art expresses emotion," you protest. Indeed, it does. But this was no work of art. Though made of brass, it seemed alive and aware of its surroundings. I kept glancing, only briefly, passingly, so Vallis wouldn't notice. He could not think, even mistakenly, that I'd designs. I was soon proven correct. Its eyes did not move, but seemed to study the room. Its lips did not move, but conveyed disgust. I knew not if this was simply my imagination, nor if I should have told my workmates. At best, eyebrows would cock. At worst, they would look for themselves, bringing scrutiny. So I kept it to myself, hoping to capture the image in my mind. Gradually, I began to fear notice, not by Valis, but by the thing itself. The night continued. I did not. I heard a door open somewhere, and footsteps nearing the hall. I turned and saw the ensemble, dressed in finery, clutching woodwinds. They showed no enthusiasm. This was but a job, and thankfully it paid. They stood at the far end and situated their instruments. In seconds, a waltz filled the room. Jaunty at that, its major key in contrast with their passionless digits. "Why not dance?" Unwin implored us, as if fearing he was losing us. The rich obliged, though visibly had no interest. They rose, joined hands, and sashayed, never smiling, never in pace with the music, fingers ready to slip from each other at any moment. Two of my workmates danced together, feigning enjoyment. Our betters watched amused. Valis either failed or pretended not to notice. Knowing his temper, I assumed the latter. In either case, he was not my main interest. His item continued to watch the room, in even more disgust than I. Fearing it more than him, I avoided its eyes. In case of a tantrum, I could simply slink outside. I did not know the risk of angering it. Eventually, Valis moved it to the stand in the far corner. The stand, was the first of a row, all apparently awaiting their own eyesores. The room, I guessed, would double as both banquet hall and personal museum, perhaps due to space constraints or ego. Time passed and the evening unwound. The guests tired and returned to their seats. Soon as they began to slow, the band ceased and turned for the exit. Waitstaff watched with weary faces. Their night had only just begun. Everyone was exhausted by the journey, by the night, and above all their host. Even the bust, who looked relieved the end was near, and resentful it was being displayed. We longed to leave, but had to await dismissal. We didn't have to, legally, but such was custom. Eventually our host returned to his spot in the center. I thank you all for attendance, and look forward to seeing you all again. I bid all of you a good night, to end a great evening. He groaned. We rose and filed out in peace. Edwin held the door and closed it slowly, lest it be scratched. The classes were again united. Both prince and pauper made cutting remarks, as one left by carriage and one left on foot. My fellow workers, and I left as a group, bidding adieu and dispersing at the foot of the hill. For the first time, I was glad to return to my hovel. I awoke the next morning and walked to the village square. The townsfolk were gathered in the pub, as always, sharing the latest happenings. I sat at the end of the corner and lent my ear. In hushed tones, Valis was revealed to be no more. His maidservant found him at dawn, while bringing the first course of a 3-plate breakfast. In his bed she had found a lifeless corpse. The cause was as yet undetermined. His skin was pale, his eyes were sucking, his stomach was distended, and his mouth had stretched from ear to ear. Medicine knew nothing like it. Suspects could not be determined. None of his relatives nor his guests had reason to be rid of him. To resent him, yes, but not like this. Moreover, it was unlikely anyone in the valley could leave him looking as he did. At first, I thought it a rumor, the sort common to public figures, but my neighbors were simple folk. They could not spin such a yarn, just believe one, and despite his best efforts, Valis was unknown outside our valley, so cloistered it was. As for me, I shrugged and went to work. As for my vocabulary, I am self-taught, reading used books by candlelight in my scant free hours.